Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to property maintenance for the business owner. Before we get to our presenter, I have a few minor things to go over. If you are a Zoom attendee, please put your questions into the chat and I will happily ask them for you. I forgot to ask, did you want them at the end or during? Okay.
Whatever best.
Cool. There is a handout for in-person attendees that are at the back table. I have added it to the chat for those that are online. And if you don't see it, I can send it again if you need it. What is SCORE? They are a completely volunteer-run organization to help small businesses from planning to exit. They offer free mentorship via in-person, email, or video from a nationwide network of volunteers that can match the expertise and industry you need. They offer free business tools, templates, tips on their website at score.org, and they provide free business workshops and webinars such as the one you are attending today. Speaking of, our next Southwest Missouri SCORE Tuesdays at 2 webinar is Continuity for Business, a virtual webinar in partnership with the Springfield-Greene County Office of Emergency Management. Disruption to your business costs money. Managing disruptions to your normal workflow starts with a continuity plan. Caitlin Kovac from the Springfield-Greene County Office of Emergency Management will share how to identify, document, and implement plans to recover critical functions and processes so that you will have the best strategy to weather the storm. Register online at southwestmissouri.score.org. Just click on Take a Workshop. Our presenter today is Tim Bartholomew, owner of Handy Helper. Tim and his wife have started the company in 2014 to help local home and business owners complete repairs, provide preventative maintenance and improvement projects. With over 25 years in the construction field, Tim has the knowledge and experience to tackle a variety of projects, as well as our questions. Welcome, Tim.
All right. I'll try to remember that brilliant introduction. This is property maintenance for the business owner. I am Tim Bartholomew, and I'll put it to the next slide. I forgot a clicker, so you guys will have to bear with my coming in and out of screen. And so is that on the screen, or am I on the screen, or both for the people online?
Both.
Perfect. Hi, folks. My name is Tim Bartholomew. We own a company called Handy Helper. We've got a team of people and trucks, and what we do is we help people fix stuff that's busted. We specialize in getting your list done. I'm also a former SCORE mentor and president of the local chapter, and I'm on the chamber board in Ozark and the Historic River District. Been in construction for a long time. Did residential building for about 8 years, residential building construction and custom and spec homes. And then I worked for a commercial construction company building banks, credit unions, and school projects for about 10 years. And decided that we needed to, this was a specialty that not a lot of people are doing, not a lot of people are doing it well. So that's where we are, and we're doing well. So let's take a minute and go around and just for my benefit, if you guys could introduce yourselves and tell me who you are and what you're doing here, I would appreciate it. Yeah, I'll start with you.
I'm Tim Dobbins. I'm a SCORE mentor and a Handy Helper customer.
Thank you.
And just came to see the presentation today and was really interested in it. So.
Renee Brummett, I'm the director of Fisher County Library. So I manage all of our properties and done some work for us.
Thank you.
And I'm Brandon Jason. I'm the branch manager here at the Nixa Library. We have also user services, and I handle some day-to-day operations and maintenance as well. So
Perfect.
Justin Galt. I own a small business, Galt's Home Services. Do similar work to what you're doing.
Okay.
I've used the SCORE program in the past, and email just jumped into my inbox the other day. So it seemed like a title that I maybe ought to pop by and see what you have to say. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Who are you, Stacey?
I am Stacey with Handy Helper. I run the office side and am married to Tim. So
There you go. She's the founder of Handy Helper, and I've taken a lot of it over. But It started
It's a
with
team
her.
effort now.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sheila Schenkel. I'm a squirrel, so I'm a mentor, and I am just here to answer questions after, if anybody has any questions about their business or how any of this applies to anything. I'm just here to answer questions
Awesome. Thank you.
and learn from what you have to say, of course.
If that happens on accident, it's a great deal. Charlie.
Oh, I'm Charlie Evans. I am the Adult Services Librarian here at the Cushing County Library.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So as we go through, and all you people online, you could just introduce yourself to yourself and we'll get. So what is facility maintenance? It's everything to do with the building and all the different pieces and parts. This is just kind of a quick overview of stuff. Sometimes when people get into business, especially as a small business owner, if you've never been in business before, there's a lot of things with the building that are not related to necessarily what you do as a business that you may not think of. Security, security cameras, security alarms, that type of thing. Painting, you got to keep the walls painted, you got to keep it looking nice. Landscaping, plumbing, toilets back up, you've got problems. Somebody needs to mow the yard, pressure washing and keeping things clean. Locksmith, something if you have a lot of locks, a lot of doors, a lot of equipment. Sometimes you have to have a locksmith, you have to have a master key program. When people come and go, you want to change the locks and that type of thing. They can be very involved, and it's not necessarily what you do for a business, but it is one of the other things you have to keep track of. Window cleaning, HVAC, electrical, janitorial. All of these things wrap up, and they all serve as distractions for what you're really trying to do as a business. But what they also are is critically important, just like your HR department is critically important to make sure that your employees have the things that they need. Your facility maintenance program or department or whatever that case may be in your business is also critically important, even though it might not be the most fun thing or might not be what you wanted to spend your time on. So there's a few different ways of breaking up the different categories and different types of facility maintenance stuff. First thing, we have your janitorial. You've got to have, somebody needs to be a regular cleaner of your facility. Even if your facility is your office at your home, if it's a home office, somebody still has to clean that office. Somebody has to vacuum the floor. So be thinking about these things. Doesn't matter how small your business is, there's still some type of facility that the business is housed in, and these things are critically important. Carpet cleaning needs to happen on somewhat regular basis if you want to keep and maintain the carpet. Window cleaning, trash service, pest control. If you get mice or crickets or whatever, it's going to be a problem for your business. And all of that stuff. Why are these things important? Customer satisfaction. You want your customers are generally coming to your business or dealing with your business because of your reputation and your brand identity. And if your brand identity has anything to do with cleanliness or serving customers in a clean manner, then your facilities better show that, and you better have that as part of your brand identity. It also helps with employee engagement. Employees that work in a clean facility are more engaged and they enjoy their work better and they will perform better. And therefore it reduces turnover. What all that says is your janitorial expenses are an investment into your brand identity, into your employee engagement as well. So it's money you spend to, it indirectly affects your employees and their morale. You also have to do repairs and maintenance to your facility, mowing and yard work. Obviously, if there's a lawn involved, you've got to have mowing and yard work, leaf pickup, that type of thing. If there's trees, the trees are going to grow. The branches are going to have to be cut. All that type of thing. Parking lot, big parking lots, especially, they are expensive. Your parking lot has to be sealed regularly. It has to be striped regularly. If it's not, it will break down and you'll have to install a new parking lot, which is way more expensive than maintaining the one you have. Light fixtures, ballast, especially in older buildings. These are LED lights, so they're much less susceptible to needing a replacement. But if you're in an older building, With old fluorescent bulbs, the ballasts need to be replaced all the time. It's a constant battle to keep up with those things. And it can be an unexpected expense if you're not used to it, if you're leasing a space that's older, that type of thing. Mechanical systems as well, heat and air. You've got to have heat, you got to have air conditioning. If things get too hot in the building, morale goes down, employees can't do their thing. Customers don't want to be in there. Furniture repair. When I say furniture, I'm talking about like cubicles and stuff like that, or even just these kind of chairs. If a chair breaks, you've got to be able to get it fixed or replace it or something of that nature. If you've got cubicles, there are hundreds of thousands of different pieces and parts for those systems furniture. And if you have cubicles, then you've probably got some extra parts in the back room. If you don't, you soon will. Because as you rearrange things, it takes more parts and some extra pieces are always left over. So it's good to have that and to know what you have so that if you do decide you need to add another desk, you need to add a workstation, you need to separate workstations or anything of that nature. It's all important for furniture repair as well. If somebody's chair breaks, then they can't sit. That's bad. Why is these things important? Same reason above, but it also saves you money and it continues your operations. If you don't do these things, then later on, you're gonna have to do them anyway, and you're gonna have to do them the expensive way. It's just like anything else. Maintenance is one of those things that you pay a little bit at a time, you end up saving a lot more money over the long term. If you don't do maintenance as you go, and you just pay for something on the front end and you let it fall apart, and later you have to buy the whole brand new thing again, whatever that is, a parking lot or a cubicle or a furnace or anything of that nature. It's always more expensive to buy it all at once than it is to maintain what you have. So, there you go. Safety and security is another thing to keep in mind. Locks, cameras, that type of thing. Your camera system, depending on the business you're in, could be very, very detailed, very ornate, could be very expensive. Sometimes they're, monitored off-site, sometimes they're on-site. Sometimes it's just some camera system you pick up at Sam's Club and have someone install. That's fine. Sometimes they'll back up to the cloud. Sometimes they'll have a DVR that's right there local. Whatever it is, you have to have something to keep track of your stuff. Snow removal, if you don't plan for snow removal, it will be very sad come January, because it's one of those things that you need to plan ahead for if you have a parking lot of any type, or even just a driveway or a sidewalk in front of your building. If you don't plan for snow removal and all of a sudden it snows, you're going to be in trouble because the snow removal guys get busy. They're not going to answer your phone calls on the day it snows. Handrails and ADA requirements. We were talking about this a while ago with Charlie, that the library over in Ozark had a big giant stairwell going to nowhere. Gravel parking lot, but a huge, crazy, the handrail was ridiculous and outdated and falling apart. And they got a brand new stair rail around that whole thing. I don't know how much that costs, but it was a lot, I'm sure. But so that's just one thing. You've got to have handrails, and if your handrails break, you got to get them fixed quickly. There's ADA requirements depending on what kind of business you have. Sometimes you have to have an opener on your door to open and close it. At the very least, if you have the public in your building, it can't take too much pressure to open the door. The resistance on the closer can't be too high. It's another one of those things that if you're trying to run a business, that's not necessarily something that is on top of mind, that, oh, make sure the closer works properly. But it should be. So that's important. Fire alarms and fire extinguishers. Probably got a fire alarm. Probably if you don't, you should need a fire extinguisher. Even if you just run an office, you still need to have a fire extinguisher handy. Because bad things can happen. Computers can trip out, anything like that. There should always be a fire alarm or a fire extinguisher. And not only that, but fire extinguishers go outdated, and you have to get them inspected regularly. Another thing to keep track of is getting fire extinguishers tagged and inspected, and I don't know everything that's required of that, but I know something has to happen regularly. And that's important. Why? Same as road. These same reasons apply to this one too. Industry requirements. Sometimes there are industry requirements that you have to have certain things. If you're in a medical thing, you know, your ADA requirements are probably gonna be much higher. If you're in a bank, your security issues are gonna be much higher. These all are important because they reduce your risk as well. Your insurance company may tell you, hey, if you do some of these things, we'll charge you less. So it may cost you a little bit, but it may save you more on insurance later. It's another reason to have that conversation with your insurance company, with your general liability insurance, with your workers' comp insurance. When they do their audits and they come and look at your company, that's something you should be discussing with them. Hey, what can I do to my facility or the way I work with the people to reduce my risk, to reduce the insurance company's liability? What can we do to make it better? Also, people safety. Obviously, if you've got ice on your sidewalk or anything like that, it's a hazard. You want to keep your employees safe, and you also want to keep your customers safe at all times. It costs money to do that, just like everything else. So another way of looking at this, at facility management, is you've got hard services and soft services. Hard services are hard. They're things that you can physically touch generally. The fire system, the lighting system, preventative maintenance in the utilities, structural maintenance, those type of things. Things that you can actually see and touch and feel that you need to maintain on a regular basis. There's the soft side is other things that you need to do, but they're not necessarily stuff you can physically grab hold of. Waste management, you've got to have a trash service. If you're creating trash, now that's not. It can start out very small, go big to a big giant dumpster. You need to figure out who's going to do it, how often they're going to dump it. You might need recycling. You might need shredding. Some industries require paper to be put in a locked trash can and then shredded on a regular basis, depending on what your business is. Cleaning services, space planning. Space planning goes back to the cubicles I was talking about a while ago. You need to know what cubicles you have and what you need as you're doing space planning, as you're planning for new employees and that type of thing. Those are the type of things you need to be thinking about and planning for that are not necessarily, like I said, it's not what you do for a business, but it's some of the support activities that have to be done. Employee health and safety compliance, pest control, catering, something I had mentioned before. Catering, if you're providing food to your employees, you need to have somewhere that you need to have a location for that to happen, but you also need to have somebody that does it. Sometimes this is just a matter of hiring a company to stock the coffee machine on a regular basis. There's many companies that do that. Other companies, big tech companies, they often serve their people on a daily basis, get free lunch and that kind of thing. I don't know if anybody on this webinar is running Google, but if you are, that's a good deal. Landscaping, we talked about that. So it's just another way of dividing, and sometimes different people in the organization can be responsible for different sections, different parts of this. Which takes me to, who's going to do all this work? Is that going to be you, the business owner? Probably got a lot of hats already. If you do everything, then this is just another thing to add to your list. If you're a very small company, that's where you start. That's where we all start. That's where I started, and I've got a lot of hats right now, but I'm taking one off at a time, hopefully. But if you're the business owner, you have to do it all. And once again, it's a distraction from the other things that you're trying to accomplish. You probably didn't go into business to run an office. You went into business to serve customers in some way, and running the office is something else you have to do. So as you grow, hopefully you can take some of those hats off. You can give some of that to someone else. If you're in a building, but you don't own the building, but you run the business, then the building owner could be the person you call. It depends on your lease agreement. We'll look at that in a second. And in theory, you just have to make one call and say, hey, this is busted. or this needs attention. And your building owner is responsible to take care of that. So one less hat to wear if that's the case. Another option with that is if you or the building owner has a building management company, they can work as a third party in between, and they can take care of all of your calls as the business owner to, for repairs and maintenance. And then they deal with the building owner on getting paid and that type of thing. It depends, like I said, on your lease agreement. Here's some different versions, different ways you can structure that agreement, which has, which may or may not include the maintenance. In a single net lease, the tenant will pay the rent and the property taxes only. So if you own the business, then that's what you're paying when you pay your lease payment. On a double net lease, the tenant's gonna pay the rent, the property taxes, and the insurance on the building, that type of thing. And if you have a triple net lease, then you've got to pay for the rent, the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance and repair. So if that's the type of lease that you have, then you probably need to, depending on how big the facility is, you may need to hire a management company to take care of these maintenance and repairs. That can, once again, it can happen with your employees, or it can happen with a management company. Am I talking too fast? Okay. Feels like I'm talking a lot. And, oh, you can have your employees do it. If you don't want to get a management company, if you're still small, you can have your employees do it. Or if you get big, a lot of times the management company is the in-between. When you're tiny, the owner or the employees are doing it. And then as you grow, you get a management company. And then when you get real big, you get your own department that does the maintenance. Sometimes you have your own department. Sometimes the employees can do the maintenance, especially cleaning and stuff like that, maybe after closing. I've known some banks and offices where they will either close early one day a week and they'll do all the cleaning of the office at that time, or they'll just pay one or two of their staff members to stay late once or twice a week or whatever it is to do all the cleaning and that type of thing. That's an option as opposed to hiring and outsourcing a cleaning company. You've got better control if you're using your employees because you're right there and you can control what they're doing and how they're doing it and when they're doing it. But you're the bad guy. If you're running a bank and you've hired tellers to, do teller stuff, hand out money and make money orders and that type of thing, and then you tell them, oh, by the way, I also need you to mop the floors. That's when you have to navigate that human resources relationship with the employees. Sometimes people don't mind, sometimes they do. It just depends. A lot of that has to do with setting up expectations on the front end. If you hire someone and say, hey, I need you to be a teller and a cleaner, and then they say, okay, I'm down with that, then they're much more likely to agree to it later. But that's a whole nother conversation about employees. But like I said, you're the bad guy. You could definitely be the bad guy if you're having your employees do the work. And a subcontractor. As you as a business owner, you can hire a subcontractor and you can hire them as needed or on an annual contract. If you're going to hire someone for doing lawn maintenance or snow removal, you're probably going to have an annual contract. Say, okay, for this winter, I'm going to hire you to do my snow removal. That way they are under contract, and when it snows, they'll show up. If you just hire them as needed and say, hey, when it snows, I'm going to call you, they're going to laugh at you because they're going to have plenty of other people they're going to move snow for. This works for a company like us where we can do either one. If you have a sink falling off the wall and you need some help with that, you can call a company to fix that and they can reattach it, that type of thing. A lot of times on an as-needed basis, you can hire just a tree trimming company to trim your trees. You don't need to necessarily have an annual agreement, but you can, depending on how much you care about your trees and how important they are to your brand identity. If you're a business that is known for having lots of nice trees around your facility and that type of thing, maybe having an annual contract with the tree maintenance company to keep them trimmed and keep them sprayed and whatever else they do to trees is important. But you have a direct contract with that subcontractor. As the business owner, you'll hire them directly. So when it comes to that, you've got to be able to figure out how to hire the subcontractor and not just, see who shows up at the door. Which takes me to the pros and cons of in-house property maintenance. So this would be using your own employees. So what's good about that? What's bad about that? I mentioned what it is a little bit, but the pros, why would you want to do your own property maintenance in-house? You can have a dedicated team. And even if you don't have a dedicated team, you might have a dedicated person. And as you as the business owner is trying to take those hats off, you take one of those hats that says property maintenance and you hand it to one of your employees and say, you're going to do everything you do. Plus, when something needs to be done with the facility, you're going to take care of it. Then you're adding to that employee's responsibilities, and they can take that and run with it. And that way, when the door stops working, the front door doesn't work properly, instead of you as the business owner trying to track somebody down, make that fixed, you say, hey, Steve, front door doesn't work, get it fixed. And then your employee goes and he does whatever he needs to find someone to get the door fixed. If you have in-house staff, you have a little bit better control of the emergency maintenance costs because you're paying those employees directly. And the whole reason you want to do regular maintenance is so you have less emergency costs. But every now and then this still happens, no matter what. You're going to have an emergency. Eventually, something's going to need to be done. And if you're paying your own employees, if they're on salary, then it's just part of their job. You don't necessarily have extra costs hourly. If they're on hourly wage, you might have some overtime, but it still may be less than hiring a company to come out and take care of something in an emergency. If a rock gets thrown through your front window of your building and you need somebody to come board it up right away, a company's can come out and do that. But for emergency services, there's always a premium because of the time factor and everything, the security factor and everything of that nature. Another good thing about having in-house people is they're familiar with your operations. Your staff knows, they know where the mop closet is. They know, what is most important when it comes to maintaining your property, what the clients see and what the employees see. They know where things are, they know what's important. And it's helpful because you can talk to them in a shorthand and they can get things done that you can't talk to a third party about necessarily because the third party won't have any context to understand them. Which goes to better communication, same thing. If you can communicate better with people that you communicate with on a regular basis. And then you have control over maintenance issues over time. So if you hire it out as a third-party company or subcontractor, sometimes you're on their schedule for doing maintenance work. And that may or may not be the best thing for your business. If you have control over the maintenance issues with your own in-house staff, if you need to change that maintenance interval, or if you need to expand what is being maintained or decrease or control your budget based on your maintenance budget, you can control and change all of that stuff much easier and more frequently if you have your own in-house staff. But it's not all roses. Sometimes there's some things that could be better. If you have an in-house staff, again, we're still talking about having employees doing the work. You probably don't have a specialist. If you're running an office, you don't have someone that knows how to fix the furnace. So that's a problem. You still need to have somebody do that. Hiring and training. Whatever your office or whatever your business does, it probably isn't doing facility maintenance. I know our businesses, your businesses, but most businesses aren't doing facility maintenance. So when you hire, you need to, if facility maintenance is part of your employee's duties, you need to hire someone that has that additional skill in addition to whatever you're normally doing. And then you have to train them and you have to give them tools and resources to be able to do it in an effective manner. Some people don't want to do that other job. So a lack of motivation, like we talked about before. That teller might not want to do the mopping, even call about getting the furnace repaired by somebody else. So that's a discussion to have, but it can be an issue, and it's not necessarily great thing. Distraction from other duties. As I said before, you're trying to run a business. So if you're trying to run a library business, or if you're trying to run a bank or any other kind of business, taking care of the facility is not the primary concern of you or your employees generally. So what this does is it distracts, and by distracting, it takes your focus off the ball, and you're not necessarily serving your customers to the best of your ability or your team's ability because you're focused on other things. And inability to optimize the time required. You're trying to serve your customers, again, I keep saying that, but whatever you're doing to serve your customers is not usually taking care of the facility. But if you have to make a bunch of phone calls to get the front door fixed because it won't open properly, and therefore it's a problem for your customers, the customers that do make it in the door, you're not able to serve them as effectively because you're distracted by calling the locksmith. That type of thing. So what about contracting it out, hiring somebody else to do this work? Pros, in-depth technical knowledge. You could probably contract with somebody that knows how to fix that furnace a lot easier than you could hire somebody that knows how to fix that furnace. Better safety training. I know that a lot of, especially mechanical companies, heat and air, plumbing, electricians, that type of thing. Those companies, they do a lot of safety training. Safety is a big deal. I know OSHA training especially, they do OSHA 10, OSHA 30, those are how many hours. I've got OSHA 30. They've got a lot of those organizations, especially on the commercial side. There's just their training, their safety training is second to none because that's what they do every single day. So it can be more cost effective to hire someone because of all the cons we talked about on the previous slide. Because you can hire somebody just to do this one thing, they're highly trained, they're much safer, and they can do that thing, and then you can focus on what you're normally doing. It frees up management time because instead of micromanaging or managing a team that you're not necessarily familiar with, that type of work, a management team can focus on what they're really good at, serving the customers for the business that you're in. And it's a lower initial investment because you can hire a company to do that one thing, that one time, and that's it. Versus when you start having your employees do it, then it becomes a recurring thing and it can add up over the long haul. But hiring a contracted company is not necessarily the end all be all either, because you have less control over when it gets repaired, who repairs it, how they repair it, what materials they use, which that could be good or bad. I mean, maybe you don't know any of the answers to those questions, so having less control is better. Longer response time. If you have an employee in the building that is responsible for taking care of maintenance, you just call them up and send them over there and they do it. If you have to call a third-party company and they have to come from a different place in the world, even if it's just across the street or down the road, it's going to increase the response time. The frequent assessment of the quality of work. If you have your own employees, you're doing regular assessments of that maintenance work. If it's a subcontractor, then every single time they do it, you might need to double check their work. Whereas an employee, you'll get to see their work the same every time. Communication gaps, it's harder to communicate with people that you don't see all the time. And emergency work orders can be expensive just because of the nature of it. Emergencies are always expensive. So, any questions as we're going? Okay. So if you're going to hire a property maintenance contractor, how do you do that? What's important? Well, the first thing you do is you sit down and you assess your needs. I need somebody to fix stuff. Okay. By the way, there's a sheet in your handout where you can list all the stuff in your business that you need fixed. And so you get you started thinking about this. So what services do you need? Do you need somebody to mow the yard? Do you need somebody to move snow? Do you need somebody to clean the carpet? Do you need somebody to clean regularly? How about cleaning the windows? Do you need somebody to fix the furnace? Replace the ballast and lights? all that stuff, if you've got anything, depending on the size of your business, you're gonna have a lot of things that you will need at some point. And just thinking this through is good for your business, because that way when something bad happens, you know, you've already thought about who you're gonna call. So you're not at the last minute searching Google for an electrician. You've already figured out what electrician is gonna make the best fit for your business. So think about that. How frequent are you gonna need them here? Is it somebody you just need as needed? Or do you need them to come out and clean the building every week or twice a week, whatever? Get input from your staff. If this is just the owner with those 32 hats on his head, determining everything, you're probably gonna miss something, and it's not gonna be as good of a plan as what it otherwise could be. And the last thing, in terms of the budget, what do you think this is gonna cost? Because it might be more than that, especially if you're calling at the last minute, which is part of the reason to plan ahead. So determine what your budget's gonna be. Once you have all these things thought through, then you can start calling people. When you call up these contractors of doing whatever these different things are, and you're gonna be asking them for a bid on the project, you want a written scope of work. You don't want to give them an explanation of what you want and have them just give you a number on a Post-it note that says $732. You want them to be able to give you a written proposal that says, I'm gonna clean your building, and these are the 16 things I'm gonna do every week, that type of thing. You need to get it in writing. Number one, make sure you and the contractor are on the same page. Because otherwise, if you don't have it in writing, you're gonna expect a lot more and they're gonna expect to do a lot less. And that's a problem. Every single time. So get it written down. But the scope of work, and that also allows you to compare. If you get multiple bids, you can compare. Well, this company is gonna do these 16 things. This company only listed 10. I wonder, so you gotta think about which one's gonna be better. You have to go back and forth sometimes. Reputation and referrals. It's not all about the price. It seems like it is, especially as a small business. You're gonna hire the cheapest company to do the work. Just because they'll say they'll do it cheaply, might mean they'll do it cheaply. They might not do a good job. And that's not necessarily what you want. You want to hire the best fit for your company. So if this particular bit of maintenance that you're talking about right here is important to your business and your business brand, it's probably important to spend more money on it to make sure you get the right company. So you need to find a company that has a reputation in your industry with your peers, with other companies, or other people that you know, that they do a good job. That's where referrals come in. When after you've made this list, call up your friends that are in business, that have a facility or have a similar need to you, and talk to them. Hey, I need this done. Who do you recommend? And a lot of times, that's usually the best place to start, is to contact those companies. Referrals and reputation are critical in hiring a maintenance company. So is personnel. The personnel that show up, are they clean? Are they trained? Do they have the right tools? Can they talk to you? All that stuff's important. Are you going to have the same person back every time? Or is this some huge conglomeration with no face, and you don't know who's going to show up and you don't know when? And when they do, who knows what's going to happen? So talk to them about what kind of people they have working for their business. These property maintenance companies, sometimes they're small and you're dealing with just with the owner and they're doing everything, which is fine. Other end of the spectrum, you can hire these national property management companies. All they do is manage paperwork, and they hire the small company to do the work. So you may or may not know who's going to show up, but it's something to think about. And then software. Software is something as well. Does this company have a way to show you what is going on with your building and to help you track the improvements you're making, the maintenance you're making? Do you have somewhere where you can keep track of the paint colors even? There's some of these softwares are big that you can track, this is what kind of window blinds I have. And so if I break one, I know what I need to buy to order, so it'll still match the rest of the office. This is the color of the striping in my parking lot, because if it starts wearing out, I can get it restriped and it still looks like it did before. This is the company that I'm using for my systems, furniture, my cubicles. If I need more, I can go to this company and get more that'll match. So keeping track of all that information can be a huge nightmare. As your business grows, that gets harder and harder. And a lot of these property maintenance companies can help you with that and keep track of that. So that way, when you say, I need another cubicle, the property management company will say, okay, I'll get it taken care of. And then they've got all that information already tracked. They can contact the cubicle company. They can come put it together. All kinds of stuff like that. And then you have to make sure your paperwork's in order with your maintenance contractor. You need a contract. You need something in writing that says a scope of work and a dollar amount that you both agree to. Because like I said, otherwise there's going to be a disconnect and then it's an argument later. You need to get a W-9. You got to make sure they have insurance, general liability, workers' comp insurance. If a maintenance worker is on your building property and they get hurt, you can be liable if they don't have insurance. Also, when your insurance does an audit at the end of the year, you have to have an insurance certificate from your contractors, because if you don't, you're paying for their general liability and workers' comp insurance. So hiring a small company may be dirt cheap sometimes, but if they don't have these things, then you're going to be paying for it on the back end. And then that's not going to come out of your maintenance budget. It's going to get real messy and mucky, and your accountant's going to hate you. So get your paperwork in order and keep it in order. All these things are critical. Any questions about any of those things? We're making progress. Certain industries have special requirements. If you're in these industries, you're going to know about it. But I just thought I'd throw them up here for just to think about. If you're in food service, there's a lot of facility requirements, temperature control, cleanliness control, that type of thing, that are related to your facility. So you're not just, you're trying to give people chicken and then, you always dreamed about being in the chicken business, but besides just serving fried chicken, you've got to do a whole bunch of other stuff on the back end. It's not nearly as much fun. I mentioned this before, cameras on the financial industry. I've built banks for 10 years. Cameras are a big deal. Vault construction on the thickness of the walls, the rebar and all that type of stuff. If you're in these industries, you'll know about it. It's just more stuff to keep in mind as you're starting a business, what kind of business you want to start. If you're in the construction industry, there's a lot of OSHA requirements for additional training and that type of thing. OSHA can inspect any business that's serving the public, but they're more likely to check on construction companies. So that all needs to be taken into consideration. And it's not just training, but it's also labeling your facilities and that type of thing, and signage and things like that. So it's that's where the HR and the facilities kind of overlap sometimes. If you're in the medical field, there's a million requirements for everything that I can't even imagine. If you're selling marijuana, this is the thing now. I don't know what the requirements are, but I bet there's some specifics. And in the education, you have to be able to make sure you lock the kids out of the building, or have limited access and that type of thing. So there's always things to keep in mind in specific industries. A few special concerns I want to mention: fire doors. If you're in a big building, oftentimes you have fire doors to separate that big building into smaller sections. So if a fire breaks out over here, it doesn't blow through the whole building and knock everything out. It stops at that door. So don't prop the door open with the door stopped, because it's a big fire hazard. If there's 99.9% of the time, it's not going to make a bit of difference. And having a door propped open is not going to hurt anything. But that 0.1% of the time can be a major problem. So don't block the door open. The same goes for fire egress doors. You want to limit access to your building, but if you chain the doors closed, that could be a problem. So fire doors are a big thing related to your facility that you need to think about and keep track of. And if you're in Springfield, they're going to have a fire marshal going to come talk to you about that stuff as well. Utility shut-off locations. You need to know where to shut off your power where to shut off your water. Not only you as a business owner, but your employees need to know that as well, because if something breaks, Murphy's Law says you're not gonna be there, and your employees are gonna panic and they're not gonna know what to do. So figure out where your utility shutoffs are, have that be part of your orientation, show them, make sure you don't have giant stacks of chairs stacked up in front of your water shutoff. It needs to be able to be accessed. So keep that in mind as well. Plan ahead. That's the whole reason why you guys are here, why you guys are online, is because you want to plan ahead. You want to think about these things ahead of time. It's much less expensive to plan ahead and to think about it ahead of time than it is to panic and when all hell breaks loose. So plan ahead. The bigger your team, the more people need to be involved to make sure that you think about these things ahead of time. Even when you're just setting up a business, which some people online may not even have their business set up yet. When you're thinking about setting up a business, plan ahead, think about all these facility requirements. Think about maybe it's a lot more work than you thought. Okay, now I just got a few pictures of some repairs that are common to businesses. This was a column. It was all rotten, all apart. We fixed it up, and then the painter came back later. We didn't get the painter. Parking lots, I mentioned parking lots. Parking lots are a huge, huge expense. Making sure they're sealed, making sure they're striped, making sure that they get repaired, making sure they get the snow removal, one thing after another. Yes?
What's the standard for like how often you should be resealing parking lots? Is there like every 3 years, every 5, every year? What's the?
I don't think most parking lots don't need it every year. It depends on the quality of the sealing job. Because some of the sealing companies it doesn't last very long. It depends on depends on the product they use. I would talk to the sealing companies and ask them and see what they say. And I would ask 2 or 3 of them. I don't know, we don't do parking lot sealing, so to answer that question. But if you do it more frequently, keep the cracks sealed up, your parking lot will last longer. If you wait 10 years between sealings, those cracks open up, water gets down in there, freeze-thaw cycle starts tearing things up, and things go bad quickly. So that's why you see old buildings that are empty, their parking lots degrade very fast when people stop using them. It only takes a couple of years. Weeds start getting high and everything else. Cubicles. I mentioned cubicles. Signage. I didn't even say anything about signage. Signage is another thing with your facility that can be very expensive on the front end just to buy a sign, especially this type of sign where all the letters are separated out. That's expensive. But not only that, but once the sign's there, you've got to maintain it. If it stops working, if the lights go out, if the thing falls off the building, anything of that nature, if a storm blows through, you've got to have a sign company that you can talk to. Awnings as well. Fabric awnings especially. Those wear out. They have to be cleaned. They have to be maintained. And it's one of those things you need to be saving money every so often, saving it up so that you'll have money when it comes time to replace these things. And as you're coming up with your company name, the smaller and simpler sign is less expensive. Roofs. Roofs. You want to keep the water out. There you go. Any questions? That's basically it. And actually, besides roofs tie into ceiling tiles. Ceiling tiles are a pain in the neck. I'm speaking your language, right? We do a lot of ceiling tiles. Ceiling tiles, they always get wet and they always stain. And the issue is you can go in and you can replace all ceiling tiles, but if you haven't fixed the roof from the previous slide, then it's going to come back. And sometimes it's not just a roof leak. Sometimes it's a air conditioning condensation line. Sometimes it's a plumbing line. Sometimes it's condensation on the ductwork that's dripping. It can be lots of causes of that. This is a big clue that you need to call somebody to do some maintenance on your building. But the first first person you should call should not be the person to replace that ceiling tile. You've got a bigger problem that needs to be addressed first. So ceiling tiles are a big deal. And you need to have somewhere in your building where you have extra ceiling tiles, because it doesn't matter, you're always gonna need one. Always gonna need one.
Or at least know what the product is. so
Or at
you can
least know what
match
the product is, which
appropriately.
goes back to that software, or somebody having a file somewhere that says, I've got this type of a USG radar ceiling tile, or whatever it is. Because if you're gonna replace them, you're gonna want it to match. Backflow preventers, especially commercial buildings.
Sorry.
Have you dealt with this too?
If we just bought the whole building and they have a sprinkler system and all that, and I know nothing about it.
You need to know something about that. I don't know a lot about backflow preventers because it's a little bit above my skill level, but I do know that they have to be tested every year and they have to be certified, and somebody has to sign something, and otherwise you get in trouble. So,
You have to pay for it.
and you have to pay for the certification, the testing, and audit, and if you don't, then you have to pay a different. Yeah, so backflow preventers, you gotta get those taken care of regularly. Oh, toilet paper, paper towels, you gotta keep track of that as well. And when vandals break your toilet paper holder, you gotta be able to get a new one in a timely fashion. Blah, blah, blah. This is a, what's it called? The bathroom? Stall. Stalls. I was gonna say cubicles, but that was wrong.
Although they are
You got a
similar in
toilet
construction.
cubicle. You got a toilet in your cubicle, you definitely need to talk to the HR part. But the stalls, those things always need maintained. Oh, those things get rusty, they fall apart, the parts don't match. The doors don't lock, the people hang, I don't know what they hang on those hangers on the back of the doors, but they come off a lot. Something else to keep track of. Like I said, the bigger your building, the more of these things you've got. If you've got a dock equipment, that stuff moves, got to be maintained. It's one of those things where it's a pain in the butt to maintain it, but if it's not maintained and it breaks, you can't unload your truck, then you can't serve your customers, and that's a problem. Drywall repairs. Everybody's got drywall, just about. And some nitwit's gonna put their foot in it, or they're gonna be moving a chair and they're gonna bang into it, or who knows. And so you're gonna have to get somebody to do drywall repair. And when you do drywall repair, then you have to do painting
And texturing sometimes.
and texturing, thank you. So it's everything adds up. There we go. Questions? I've got 7 minutes, so that's pretty good. All right, do we have any questions from the online community?
Currently,
How do you know if you have a fire door? Like, is it labeled somewhere?
Usually it is labeled, yes. Number one, it'll probably have a closer on it and not a door stop and not a hold open. And then if you look on the edge of the door, this is the fire door, I'm sure. Right here, there's a label. That says listed fire door 20-minute rating. There you go. So don't prop the door open.
Do you know what's from?
So what did you say?
Don't prop it open.
Don't prop it open. Because if there's a fire, that will stop the fire.
Ah, okay.
But if it's propped open, the fire,
It doesn't serve protection.
Both directions?
correct. Yeah, it doesn't matter which side the fire's on is. Because this whole wall and this building has like 4 sections probably. And there's a fire separation wall between each section. So this wall goes all the way up. It doesn't just stop at the ceiling, it goes all the way up to the roof deck. And it serves as a fire separation wall. So any penetrations through it, like a door, has to be a fire rated door. And you can't, and so also you can't just add another door here and just buy a cheap door. You've got to buy a fire door. You also can't, if you want to make a pass through, to pass books through the door, the wall. I don't know. You can't just have pass through because it's a fire rated wall. So that type of thing. Anything that's any penetrations up through the wall above the ceiling have to be fire cooperative, fire seal, that type of thing. All this stuff, I mean, that stuff you probably won't see or know, but it affects how expensive things are when you do get something done. If you're gonna run new data wires, new conduit or air, or Tim, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wondered if you could talk about your business and the types of services y'all do provide that you showed and ones that you don't, how you interface with your customers with software or whatever.
Sure.
And what kind of business model you guys have.
Sure. Well, we are a small business. Like I said, we got about 5 people and we do a lot of this stuff. Basically, the best way to look at our company is we're there to help. And so if we can't do it, we'll send you to somebody that can. We've got a lot of trusted partners in a lot of different industries. And if we don't do a certain thing like backflow preventer testing, then we can put you in touch with somebody that does. So we do drywall repairs, we do door installations, we do door repairs, that kind of thing. And as far as keeping track of everything, we don't, most of our business is residential, but some of it, a little bit is commercial. So we don't have any of those softwares to keep track of everything, so to speak. We do have some lower tech methods to keep track of things for our different client files and that type of thing. But we're on an on-call basis. We don't do very much emergency work either, personally. When people call us, we can get there in emergency if we really have to, but we're scheduled out 4 or 6 weeks a lot of times. We can't even get there to look at a project for a couple of weeks generally. I'm on a strict schedule by the boss there.
Trying not to have you work yourself to death.
Correct. So that's why it comes back to planning. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Let's talk about it. And then we'll talk about, I've got a lot of industry experience. And so we can talk about what are the ramifications of that thought. Over at the library in Ozark, I talked to Jordan about extending the window out at the drive-through. And we talked through all the different repercussions about how does that happen when you're going to extend something out of the building a little ways. And I won't get into the details, but just talking through what's important and all the mitigating factors that might not be at first obvious.
A lot of the stuff that our clients bring to us, there are several projects that planning ahead is a big factor as well. Things that they didn't think about and they have a plan and they think they want to do this, but then when you ask a few more questions, they later think, oh, well, maybe I should do it this way instead, because in the long run, it's going to be much more costly. It's going to affect other things that I plan to do later. Some things are better to do now rather than wait if you're going to do one thing.
The order of operations is
Yeah.
a big deal. When a house is built, it's built in a certain order every time. Well, when you are renovating a house, if you do it the wrong order, you're working upside down. You know, if the foundation is starting to settle a little bit, things are wonky, but you replace all your doors and make them work perfect, and then you come back in and you jack up your foundation to straighten it out, then your doors get all wonky. So there's things like that that you have to think about. I've talked to people about replacing their interior doors on their house. Well, then do you want the jambs replaced too? Okay, yeah, well, then that's the trim around the jambs. What about the baseboards? Well, what about that? Okay, we need to do that too. Well, if we're gonna do the baseboards, what about the flooring? Because it's best to do the flooring before you do the baseboards. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Now, this popcorn ceiling, do you want to scrape the popcorn ceiling before we do the floors, before we do the doors, before we do the trim? And painting the walls. So, not that we try to sell people on doing everything at one time, we just talk through the ramifications. Okay, if we do this, then later if we do this, there's going to be a little bit more expense because we did it in the order we did it. So that's definitely part of the discussion. That's why having someone with the industry experience to talk through that stuff, especially when you're not super familiar with all those details, is really helpful. Yes.
If someone wanted to use your services, how would they get a hold of you?
I've got some business cards here if you would like. But also handyhelperozark.com is our website, and you can go there and you can see all the great stuff that we've done. We're also on Facebook as well. And we'd be happy to talk to people about what we do, and commercial or residential, and be glad to help you out. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you don't mind asking a question about your business still.
Absolutely.
How's your hiring process when you bring on people to do this type of work?
Mhm.
That for me personally, that's a major complication.
It is a big challenge. What I usually do is we'll have a phone conversation. If that goes well, then we'll have an in-person conversation. And if that goes well, then I'll tell them to come work for me for a day or two, and I'll just pay them cash for that. And if that works out, then we'll talk about employment at that point, and we'll go through the benefits that we offer, pay time off, and that kind of thing, schedule, pay. And it's very difficult to find people to do the work we do because there's such a big variety of things. We can find a specialist in this, that, or the other thing, but finding someone that can do a lot is looking for a unicorn.
There's a lot of trust you have put into somebody that you
Yes.
send them over there, that if they say they've done some drywall repair, well, they're gonna go in there and do that properly and.
Right. We have a shop that we train people at, and we practice on stuff at our personal house in our shop. We say, well, here's how you hang a door, and kind of go through that process a little bit, that kind of thing. Well, a lot of businesses have trouble finding people. Construction is very, especially difficult. So, yeah.
There's also the matter of background checks and other things that.
Yeah, we do background checks
Yeah.
and driving checks and that kind of thing. So
So we want to make sure that,
we make sure the people that we're sending into people's homes are people that we can trust, people that we would have in our own home, that kind of thing. Because it's a big deal. Because every single week we're in somebody's house and they're not home. And even if they are home, it's maybe one lady that's there by herself with my guys working, So we're not going to put anybody in that situation where anything could happen that is going to be negative towards the homeowner, towards our business, or anything of that nature. So a lot of oversight and keeping track of people. That's what it is. Any other questions?
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, my pleasure.